Good afternoon. Today, we continue of our series interview, Transformational Change in Colleges and How to Manage It, with Dr. Alex Gorelik, who is a faculty member of Benedict College and also co-founder of Gorelik Consult, who helps small and medium-sized businesses leader from better relationship with customers, partners, and employers. Alex nominated for TEDx and featured Who is Who in America. Alex, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Xenia, and a good time of day to our listeners.
Glad to talk to you again.
Good to be with you.
Today, we talk about how to transfer the educational institution and new format. Who, what, when, and how. Step to take future profile your colleges. In previous interview, we conversational talked about how essentially higher education is increases. So why we are talking about future profiting? Shouldn't we think about getting out of crisis first?
It's very true that higher education is in crisis, along with many other industries because of COVID-19. And yes, we absolutely should be talking about getting out of the crisis. However, I would argue that now is the best time for a college leader or a university leader, the president, to think about, plan, and execute steps to transform their organization for the future of work and education, to future-proof their organization. Why? For two reasons. Number one, because in effect, higher ed has been in crisis for many years, many decades even. You can go back 70, 80, 100 years ago and look at the literature and public discussions around higher ed, and you would find that almost the same set of complaints was discussed against the inadequacies of higher ed 100 years ago as is being discussed today. Nothing fundamentally changed. 100 years ago, critics claimed that the institutions of higher education were not fulfilling their obligations to prepare young people for the demands of the workplace. Same is true today. 100 years ago, higher education was blamed for inadequately preparing young people for the demands of the larger socium in which they live. Same is true today. Nothing has changed. The only way we're able to survive without reinventing ourselves is because in most countries, higher education is somewhat removed from the fluctuations of the market, the fluctuations of the economy. And so the ups and downs of the economic life are not as immediately felt by the higher education institutions in most countries, in some more than in others. In the United States, this time has passed. We are feeling the pinch very acutely, very strongly right now. In Ukraine, I suspect it may not be as urgent, or it may not feel as urgent. But I assure you, Xenia, it is. It is. And so it is coming. And it is inevitable. You can either prepare your organization for this transformation as a leader and ensure its survival. Forget future-proofing. Think survival. If you don't transform, your organization, your college, your university is not going to survive. We already seeing it in the United States, and I advise my colleagues in Ukraine and the rest of Europe, learn from this experience because it is coming to you. That's reason number one. Reason number two, from a purely business strategy perspective. Yes, we are in crisis right now, but a good crisis should never be missed by a leader because it is an opportunity to if we use it to affect change in our organization. Change is always dramatic. Change is always traumatic. It produces trauma. It traumatizes people. It every one of us, whether we are enthusiastic supporters of organizational transformation or detractors, it is traumatic for us because it changes the vision of the organization. It changes how we define who we are as a company. What is our mission? What is the reason for our existence? Raison d'être, as the French would say. It redefines our roles and responsibilities within the organizations. It redefines how I see and perceive myself and how other people, my colleagues, my fellow professionals perceive myself. So it is a traumatic experience. If we attach the inevitability of this transition to a crisis, we make it easier for ourselves, our employees, the students, most importantly, our partners, our entire ecosystem to accept this change, to accept this transition, to go through the onboarding process faster. And so in this respect, the fact that we are in crisis should not be missed as a fantastic opportunity to initiate organizational change that is sorely needed in higher education. So for these two reasons, Ksenia, I think we should be thinking about getting out of the crisis, but most importantly, we should be now thinking about making strategic changes to future-proof our higher education organizations, changes that we always wanted to make, but were afraid to.
Okay, and who will manage of this change? Who will be the chair of change management?
That's a fantastic question, and I would humbly suggest that we as educators, as members of the university and college community, look at the excellent tool set that we so proudly teach in our business schools. A plethora of organizational change and quality improvement methodologies that have been proven to work, that have been widely implemented in most other industries but education. And I suggest we take this experience, take these methodologies, adapt them to our industries, just like it was done in many others, from business consulting to aerospace manufacturing, and adapt them to our industries, to our industry, and implement them to help us and guide us through transforming our institutions. Because Essentially, what this transformation is about are two things. One is transforming a college or a university, or upgrading rather the mission of the university to reflect the modern demands that the workplace places on a graduate. So an upgrade in its processes, number one. And number two, it is a transformation of a college or university from essentially educator-centric to student-centric. So customer-centric. And if you look at these two goals, they're no different from, fundamentally, they're no different from the goals that any other company in any other industry set out to do when they embarked on a change management initiative. And we have in our disposal fantastic tools for both quality improvement and organizational change management. I would advise my colleagues to look at methodologies such as Six Sigma, Agile, Lean, and so methodologies that are geared toward improving or optimizing or changing processes, because that's what we are going to be doing operationally in the next months and years at colleges and universities. If we are not doing that, we are not going to survive. Who's going to be doing that actually? Not the and again, I suggest looking at to build a team that is that could be somewhat similar to a Six Sigma project team, where you have a project sponsor, a figurehead, whose job is not to really do anything, but symbolize change, behave in a way that demonstrates the commitment of the upper administration on the president level, on the CEO level, to the change. A person who solves administrative blocks and problems for the project. And then a little lower on this pyramid, we have a small group of black belts, people who are not formal leaders, not people who are formally in positions of administrative power necessarily. And we talked about this, right? Because if you are a administrator, you are already busy up to your eyeballs in administrative tasks. You don't want to be tasked with one more thing, right? And that is important because these people have to be champions. They have to be enthusiastic. Their main goal is to go to the faculty, go to the administrators, and propagate these ideas, colleague to colleague, peer pressure, peer influencing. They need to make change cool among their peers. And so look for latent leaders, people who are not necessarily formally in power, but people who are young, energetic, and charismatic, and have a lot of respect and gravitas among their colleagues. And then at the bottom of the pyramid, think of all the people that you want to change, right? Because changing an institution is primarily about changing people. Yes, it's also about changing formal communication processes and also changing the platforms that support these processes. But the most important task and the most difficult one is to change people, right? And so you want people to change. Who are these people? Well, these people are your faculty, your administrators, especially student-facing administrators, because your interactions with the students, as we talked in previous episodes, your interactions with students will have to change dramatically, right? So all of these people will have to be brought on board with this change. They have to be enthused in some degree. They have to understand what the change is about. They have to be communicated with. They have to be provided with a system of unfiltered feedback. That is very important. And so depending on how you define who these people are, they become the bottom of this pyramid, the most important layer, really. And by the way, before we go to another question, I wanted to mention something else. Those of us who study the experience of other organizations in education, other universities and colleges who may be a little further along this way than we are. I encourage you, colleagues, to look for the acronym CTL, Center for Teaching and Learning. And you will find that many institutions, many colleges and universities in America, but also some, very few in Europe, have this acronym in their organizational structure. Why? Because these centers are typically combined. They're separate entities, separate teams that are not attached to any department, any academic school, and are usually reporting directly to either vice president of business development or vice president of academic excellence, whatever. But they're usually reporting to the C-level directly. Why is this a good practice? Because these centers are comprised from representatives of different departments, usually self-appointed, usually those who volunteered. So right there you have self-selection of your champions, your black belts, right? People who are not administratively in power, but people who can carry the change. And these people, it's sort of a lab for innovation. It becomes a lab for innovation. It becomes a place where best practices are researched, developed, tried, tested, rejected. Mistakes are made. They're not being punished. Experimentation is encouraged. And department heads and deans cannot do anything about it, even if they wanted to, because it's not under their purview. These are essentially academic innovation centers. The teams that carry this pyramid of change forward. CTL, Center for Teaching and Learning. Most institutions that have them call them that. So look for this acronym.
No, of course. Okay, Alex, and who do you know that are the successfully managed change at the institution of higher learning?
Um, there is
Maybe there are some indicators of this changing.
absolutely. And again, I would. We can talk about specific indicators, but the thing about indicators, metrics, first of all, I would like to stress that first, it's important to have them. Right?
Yes, of course.
It's important to have them. Not all of us have them.
Of course.
Some of us think that we have them in our institutions, but we really don't. And it's very easy to discover that we don't when we start really looking at the data that they produce. And immediately, I know we've discovered that in both institutions that I am affiliated with, and I've seen it over and over again in other institutions that I am familiar with, right? Once we start looking, all of us have indicators, right? We love student learning outcomes, performance indicators. We love that stuff in education. But the problem is we never really used it for anything. Once we really start using it for business development, not just for assessing students, but for really strategically managing our college and university as a customer student-facing company, then we are likely to discover one of two things, or both. Our metrics are either non-measurable. In other words, we formulated our indicators in such a way that it is impossible to measure them. Okay?
Okay.
Or, hold on. Either they're impossible to measure, or they measure something very well that is absolutely unusable for us as a CEO. And so the most important thing is to develop a set of metrics that are measurable and that speak to the critical to quality indicators for our school, for our college, for our university as a customer-facing business. However, which specific indicators, I don't know. I don't have a set of indicators to recommend because it's going to be different for each university,
institution,
each college. However, what I can do is to recommend a general approach. If we agree that this transition is a transformational change for our company, and if we also agree that this change is not a one-time thing, okay, we have to change, we have 6 months to change, now the 6 months are over, we've changed, back to normal.
It's okay,
If we agree that this is not going to happen, that change is going to be permanent, that the future will no longer be as predictable as it used to be for us. If we realize that change will never be done over 100%, Then a simple, quick sort of criterion to judge our institutional preparedness for change is to look at what level the change has been embraced in day-to-day behaviors and practices of our employees. On the first stage, when we are just starting, it could be just an idea in the mind of our leader, our president, college president, and a few other people, right? That's one level. Everybody else doesn't know about it, doesn't want to know about it. On the second level, we may see change being embraced by a handful of individuals who are latent leaders. We may see the formation of something like a Center for Teaching and Learning, who is specifically tasked with developing and testing revamped curriculum, revamped student employer program, revamped recruitment and student relations program, something like that. On yet another stage of institutional preparedness, we may see the CTAL developed practices bubble through the body of faculty and administrators, right? And we may see people slowly embrace the change, move from passive compliance to active support. And then somewhere in the final stages, we may see change being written into the job responsibilities, the job descriptions of most, if not every, role in the university, from the dean level to department head to instructor to administrator, whatever. If at the end of the change initiative we are doing that in our organization, then our metrics may change, our indicators may shift over time, and they will. But this will be a good, stable indicator that we are more or less prepared for the uncertain future. We have future-proofed our college or university.
Okay, Alex, thank you for comprehensive answers. It's so interesting.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Ksenia.
In next interview, we will talk at the role of analysts, communication process, and platforms. So, see you.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward.
So, bye.
Bye-bye.